Hello, I'm Sarah Coates. Thanks for joining me for this extended edition of I24 News. We begin in Iran with its president, Hassan Rouhani, coming out to say that the Islamic Republic is open to nuclear negotiations with the United States only if Washington lifts sanctions against it. Rouhani speaking on state television saying, "We have always believed in talks. If they lift sanctions and end the imposed economic pressure and return to the deal, we are ready to hold talks with America today, right now and anywhere." Last year, the US pulled out of the 2015 nuclear accord and has since imposed heavy sanctions on Tehran, which it says violated the pact. Now, since then, Iran has surpassed limits agreed upon in the pact on uranium enrichment. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu says Israel will inflict a crushing military blow to Hezbollah and Lebanon if the terror group dares to strike here. Netanyahu's comments coming during Sunday's cabinet meeting after the head of Hezbollah, Hassan Nasrallah, said on Al-Manar TV that any war will put Israel on the brink of extinction. The Israeli leader adding that he will not elaborate on plans.
Over the weekend, I heard Nasrallah's arrogant remarks on his attack plans. It should be clear that if Hezbollah dares to do some nonsense and attacks Israel, we will hit him and Lebanon with a crushing military blow. In contrast to Nasrallah, I do not intend to detail our plans. It is enough to recall that Nasrallah had, for years, dug terrorist tunnels, which we destroyed within days.
The apparent truce between Israel and Gaza is in the spotlight once again, with reports that Israel has promised medicine aid and the entry of more goods into the Palestinian territory if the ceasefire on the border holds. Hani al-Thawabtah of the Popular Front for the Liberation of Palestine telling the Al-Quds website that benefits would also include a return of detained fishing boats, compensation to fishermen whose boats were confiscated, and increased permits for workers to enter Israel, citing Egyptian officials who visited the Strip on Sunday. Now, on Friday, 2 rockets were fired from Gaza towards southern Israel after Israeli troops shot a Hamas operative on the border fence. Israel's former Prime Minister and the head of the newly formed Israel Democracy Party, Ehud Barak, has compiled a list of promises if he's elected at the next elections on September 17. Now, these commitments mainly focus on broad areas of Israeli life. Among the things he wants, final borders within 2 years, the application of civil marriage within a year, public transportation on the Sabbath, free education and increased security. Here's more from Barak.
Within 2 years, we pledge to set a border for Israel that will ensure, first of all, security and a solid Jewish majority for generations. We will also arrange civil marriage within a year and public transport on the Sabbath.
The Trump administration has decided on a sanctions package to hit Turkey after Ankara received parts of the S-400 missile system from Russia. Bloomberg News is reporting that details of the sanctions plan should be announced in the coming days. Now, the Trump team reportedly chose one of 3 policies of action devised to inflict varying degrees of economic damage under the Countering America's Adversaries Through Sanctions Act. The US had tried unsuccessfully to pressure Ankara to scrap the deal by freezing it out of its F-35 fighter jet program. Staying in the US, and there are reports coming in that Donald Trump abandoned the Iran nuclear deal to spite former President Barack Obama. A leaked memo written by the UK's former ambassador to the US, Sir Kim Derrick, described the move as an act of diplomatic vandalism. So Kim wrote that Trump appeared to be abandoning the deal for personality reasons because his predecessor had secured that pact. The latest disclosure coming despite a warning from Scotland Yard about publishing leaked memos. Last week, Sir Kim was quoted as saying the Trump administration was clumsy and inept. The US leader hit back, calling him a very stupid guy. The ambassador then stepping down, saying it was impossible for him to continue. Now, there are increased calls for Israel's education minister to step down over his comments on gay conversion therapy. Activists, educators and lawmakers are demanding the resignation of Rafi Peretz after an interview on Israel's Channel 12 in which he recommended the controversial therapy.
I think conversion therapy is possible. I think it's possible. I can tell you that I have a deep understanding of conversion therapy, and I conducted it too.
And let's go now to our correspondent Ariel Levenwaldman, who is standing by at a pro-LGBTQ rally here in Tel Aviv. Ariel, thanks for joining me. Firstly, give me a bit more information about these protests. Tell me how many people have come down there.
Well, it actually just wrapped up, but while it was in full swing, there were upwards of 300 people here protesting the remarks about conversion therapy. To understand why it's so controversial, you really have to look into what conversion therapy means. It is in many ways a great deal of psychological conditioning, or in many extreme cases involving electroshock therapy to try to change somebody's sexuality. Most of the world's psychological associations say that conversion therapy does not in fact work and instead causes severe psychological trauma in people that undergo it, leading to severe depression and in many cases suicide. Now, some of the people we spoke to today in the crowd said they knew friends that went through that process and they came back broken and shattered. Why don't we hear from some of them right now?
So I'm an 18-year-old gay religious teen from Modi'in, just between Tel Aviv and Jerusalem. And I came here because I think what the Ministry of Education, head of Ministry of Education said is absolutely abominable, because conversion therapy doesn't work. And from my own experience, not as a person who went through, but as a person who knows friends of his that went to therapies like that, they just do not work. And I'm here to put that voice out, I guess.
And Ariel, just fairly briefly, tell me, what are we hearing from other Israeli political leaders today, and also other leaders around the world?
Well, certainly we had some very strong responses from the opposition. One of the ministers from the blue and white opposition party came out and said that perhaps the minister in question should undergo conversion therapy into the 21st century. Even Israel's prime minister said that the remarks by Rafi Peretz did not reflect Israeli values or the values of the right-wing government, saying they were out of line and unnecessary. There's been widespread condemnation. There's been virtually no defense of it. The closest thing that could be called a defense was a very anemic statement by the ultra-right-wing Otzma Yehudit party, who simply said, Itamar Ben-Gvir being one of their main leaders, saying that the minister in question simply misspoke, didn't mean it, and was his first time on television. You really can't find any full-throated support of these decisions from anywhere in Israeli society or abroad.
Well, it certainly is very controversial. Ariel Levenwaldman there in Tel Aviv, thank you for the update. Protests have resumed again in Hong Kong, with demonstrators demanding that its chief executive, Carrie Lam, step down. The latest show of anti-government unrest. Violent clashes erupting between protesters and police, with many of those demonstrating carrying signs reading "Stand Up for Hong Kong," demanding an investigation into alleged police brutality. Now, initially, the huge uprising was over a highly controversial proposed extradition bill, which would allow people to be sent to China for trial. Now, there are a number of other issues, though, that people want addressed.
I think there is now a huge problem as to how the police enforces the law. I don't think this protest could mend social splits. If the problem continues, it is not good for the government, not good for the community, and even worse for the citizens. Carrie Lam has been hiding. She has made many promises, but she has not been able to fulfill them. There is no sign she is going to fulfill them.
And we're going out for a short break, but when we come back, violent yellow vest protests are rocking France once again as demonstrators take to the streets, clashing with police. All of that and plenty more when we come back. Stay with us.